You're listening to Chillworthy,
a podcast where two best friends discuss mysteries, murders, and anything in between for your enjoyment.
So if you're ready to hear some chilling and unsettling cases, you're in the right place. Happy listening. All right, well, here we are back again for another episode of Chillworthy.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I was taking a drink of water. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm all right. I know last episode I mentioned my ice maker was broke. It's back.
Back in business.
Right.
Yeah.
A little smaller than the old one, which is a little bit of a bummer, but
Right. Still functions nicely,
yeah.
Your ice supply is back up to the limit.
yeah.
Good. I had a little movie watching yesterday. You will not be happy about what I watched, though.
I think you did tell me.
Oh, I did. And just,
yeah,
you
sick.
know, it's just, as we talked about, I think in the very first episode, like what is bothersome and unsettling to you,
Right.
opposite for me and obviously other people. That is such a cozy vibe
Cozy.
movie to me.
God.
I mean, I hate that the shark is, the monster and the villain in it.
Yeah.
Fun fact, do you know that the shark in Jaws, who's obviously not a real shark, is nicknamed Bruce?
I did.
You did know this.
I did, from Finding Nemo.
Yes. Also, have you been reading lately?
Yeah, I just finished Old Country.
Oh, what's that about?
It's about this young couple who moves into like a valley. I want to say if it's Montana or Utah or something.
Sounds lovely.
And an older couple who lives there also. Like there's not a lot of people who live in this valley, and an older couple who has the ranch next to them come over to welcome them and tell them, basically give them like some rules about living here, because there's an entity that lives in the valley with them, and it manifests itself in different ways depending on what season it is.
Oh, fantastic.
So
yeah. And you finished it, you said.
I did finish it. So it was, I liked it.
Good. All right, do you know what you're going to read next?
I don't.
Yeah.
I have you been doing some reading?
Well, as always.
I thought.
Goodness. Now, I just started a new one. I am absolutely loving it. It's still very early. And it's a big O. It's called The God of the Woods. And The author is Liz Moore. I read another book by this author like about a year ago, and I really liked her writing. So when I saw that she was coming out with a new book, I was super excited. And this book is kind of in line, the current book is in line with our podcast. It's unsettling. There's like a spooky situation going on. It takes place at a summer camp, and,
Would you say it's chill-worthy?
I certainly would.
Okay.
Yeah. So look into it. I think is going to be a goodie. So far,
right,
so
well,
good.
Good. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
So before we get started, just doing our little typical disclaimer, I just wanted to say that in the age of the internet, there is a bunch of conflicting information out there.
Right.
So, while we have been researching, obviously we're going to come across things that may or may not be completely accurate.
Despite our due diligence.
All right, so let's jump right in then. So the case that I want to talk about today is called the Springfield Three.
Ooh. Sounds like a horror movie.
A little teaser, a little overview is basically three women end up disappearing in the middle of the night from a house, and they don't leave a trace of anything that would have made sense as to where they went.
Yikes.
All right, so
I was going to say, did they all know each other, or were they strangers? Well, they did all live together, but
they
you
didn't
never
live
know.
together.
But
they knew each other.
Okay. And they
So-
all disappeared from the same house, you said.
Yes.
All right.
So the three people who are involved here: Sherrill Levitt, Cheryl's daughter, Susie Streeter.
How old is Susie? kiddo or like adult daughter?
Susie was 19, which
Okay.
I will dive into.
I
that in a second.
apologize.
That's all
I'm
right.
jumping
That's
the gun.
I know, it's all right.
Right.
And last but not least, Susie's friend Stacy McCall.
Okay.
So, so now a little background on these three people. So Sherrill Levitt, which is the mother of Susie. So she was born November 1st, 1944. She was 47 years old, single mother. She worked as a cosmetologist at a local salon and was known for her dedication to her job and to her clients.
Nice.
And she had pretty recently purchased this small house in Springfield, Missouri, hence the Springfield Three.
Right.
And she was in the process of renovating this house. And, she was the kind of person that took pride in making her home like comfortable for her and for her daughter, Susie. Friends and family had described Sherrill as a loving and supportive mother who had a close relationship with her daughter. And she was just known for being friendly and outgoing. And then we have her daughter, Susie Streeter. I'm not sure why the last names are different. I mean, I know she was a single mom, so I guess Susie took the father's name.
Right.
So she was born March 9th, 1973. So she was 19 years old at the time of this disappearance. And she had just graduated from Kickapoo High School.
I'm sorry?
Kickapoo High School.
Most unfortunate.
On June 6th, 1992. So she was known for being outgoing and bubbly. She had a wide circle of friends, and she was well liked by her peers, and they would describe her as adventurous and independent, often seen as a leader among her friends. Susie had plans to attend college in the fall and was excited about her future. She had a passion for art and was considering pursuing a career in something in the creative field.
A free spirit.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
Then we have Stacy McCall. So Stacy McCall was born April 23rd, 1974, and she was 18 at the time of her disappearance. So she also graduated from Kickapoo High School the same time, June 6, 1992. So she was known for her kind and caring nature. She was described as responsible and dependable. She was always there for her friends and family when they needed her. She had a boyfriend and was looking forward to the summer before starting college in the fall. She had plans to attend Southwest Missouri State University, which I guess now is known as Missouri State University, and was just excited about going to college. So that is the background of these three women thus far. So the night of the disappearance, which actually literally happened the night they graduated.
Oh.
So the evening of June 6, 1992, Susie and Stacy attended several graduation parties to celebrate their recent high school graduation. This was like that typical night of, excitement.
Drinking.
I'm sure.
Right.
Lots of celebrations. So they just kind of like party hop. So Stacy was supposed to spend the night at a friend's house. However, the party that they went to became too crowded and noisy, so they decided that they were going to return to Susie's house for the night instead.
Mistake number one.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah.
So they arrived at Sherrill's home, which, again, was Susie's mom, in the early hours of June 7th, 1992. Past midnight at this point.
And we do... Well, no. I was going to ask if we knew if Sherrill was home, but...
She was.
Okay. I was going to say if she also went missing, I suppose she surely was there.
Yes. I mean, I think she was home.
Right.
So Sherrill had been home earlier in the evening, and she was last heard from around 11:15 p.m. on June 6th when she spoke to a friend on the phone. I guess they were talking about painting a piece of furniture because, like I said, she was kind of renovating and redoing this house. So the decision to change their plans and to stay at Susie's house instead of their friend's house would basically mark the last known movements of Susie, Stacy, and the mother Sherrill. And this kind of is what leads into one of the most perplexing disappearances in recent history. So, June 6th, on this night, they were party hopping, and what the original intent was I think that they were going to stay at another friend's house, like I said, and then they were planning on going to Branson, Missouri, which I think is like a pretty popular destination out there. I don't know what it's known for, but I feel like it is kind of like an entertainment kind of place
Hub.
in the Midwest. Yeah.
Right. Now, this was close to where Sherrill lived.
I don't know
Question mark.
I don't know how close it was, but I mean, it was in the same state.
Right.
So they were supposed to do that. And then, like I said, as they changed their plans, they ended up going back to this house. So Susie drove her car, which was a 1989 red Ford Escort. And Stacy also drove. And so she was following Susie in her car, which was a 1989 Toyota Corolla.
Odd they would have taken two cars, don't you think?
Well, sort of, but I also feel like if they, I mean, who knows? Because this all happened, this like was like a chain of events.
Spur
So
of the
like, I'm saying they went to graduation. Like, would they have driven to graduation together and then like just left at one car there? Who knows?
Yeah, true.
And if they were going to multiple parties, maybe
not going to the same
right. Because I
ones.
mean, obviously, I think because what I have heard is that they did. I think they were close when they were younger. Then they grew apart. Then they grew close again. So I think they did have different circles of friends, and
Right.
you know, maybe they wanted their freedom.
Makes sense.
So after all of this, though, back and forth from all these parties, when they ended up back at Sherrill's house, that happened that night. So the next morning, now this is where, like, obviously now things take a turn.
Things are kicking up.
Right. So the next morning, friends of Stacy McCall arrive at Susie's house around 8 a.m. because they want to make plans for the day. And I'm assuming this is about the Branson, Missouri trip.
Well, geez, they're early risers.
They
They just
are, but I
graduated the night before partying.
Right, but I think that this was the plan was that they were going to Branson, Missouri the next day.
Like, let's get the show on the
Right,
road. Okay.
right.
Okay.
So, which I feel like could be equal to like people who are in our area of the country when they're going to go to the beach and they're going to leave early in the
Yes,
morning. You know,
good
I mean,
call.
people aren't going to the beach in Missouri.
They certainly are not.
Right.
No beach that we know of.
No, but I'm sure lakes and stuff like that.
Maybe.
Anyway,
Mirages.
so they arrive and they notice that all three women's cars are still parked right outside the house.
Uh-oh.
But there was no response when they knocked on the door. So the front door was unlocked,
Mistake number 2.
which I'm sure gives you chills.
Absolutely. Chillworthy.
Right. And so they enter the house and they found a rather unsettling scene.
Oh, gosh.
So Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy were nowhere to be found, but their personal belongings were still there, just like as if they just
Stepped out.
right, literally just like went outside for a second. So everything was where it normally would have been. The TV was on, and I guess it was playing static. Which is like,
literally horror movie.
right, which is like, you know, in the 90s, they probably had a VHS in, and once that's done,
Dunzo.
right,
Static.
no smart TVs back then to switch over to something. I mean, it's just, when you're done, you're done.
Absolutely. Well, can I ask something quickly?
Yeah.
Now, where this was, Sherrill's house, was it something like, was it an area where, now why all three of them would go and do this is beyond me, but like the three of them decided to go out on foot to go get a cup of coffee quickly? Like, was there anything near this house? Or, like, I'm imagining it to be super sort of isolated, deserted, no neighbors nearby, no one's
I
going
think
for a
that's
quick
the wrong
walk.
assumption.
Oh.
I don't think it was isolated. I think it was in a normal neighborhood.
Oh, I totally wasn't imagining that. I was imagining what I just said.
Right. No, this wasn't like in the woods. I mean, it
Well,
was...
no, not the woods, but like the prairie lands, if you will. I suppose desert. What is it like out there? Where
don't
are we?
know, but
Missouri
I
or
think
Montana? Montana.
Missouri.
Oh,
But I think it was just a normal neighborhood
I
from what
see.
I have
I see. Okay.
surmised.
Continue. Sorry about that.
There was also a fresh pot of coffee in the kitchen.
Well, somebody was thinking.
Right.
Someone had their head in the game.
The coffee basically makes it sound like they were there sometime that morning. And depending, you know, I mean, 8 a.m., people get up at 6, 5.
I was going to
mean,
say I would be through my coffee 2 times over by 8
Right.
a.m. Now, let me ask you this. Was the coffee pot still on? Was it cold? Was half the pot gone? Was it a fresh? I guess they don't know how much.
Well, it was a fresh pot because I said it was a fresh pot.
Well, but that could mean anything. That could mean, well,
really?
I guess.
What could it mean? Tell me. Show me.
I was going to say, well, that could mean that it wasn't touched yet, or it could mean that it was touched, but it was still hot. But I suppose it means it was hot and untouched.
That's what we're going to go with.
Okay, fine. But let me ask this. Were there mugs about? Like, was there a mug that someone had poured into? Was there an empty mug? Did anyone take
I think it was just a fresh pot of
Fine,
coffee.
fine.
Which, who the hell knows? It could have been an automatic coffee maker.
Absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, technically,
Done
they
the night
could have-
before.
Right. So that's not guaranteeing they were there that
No.
morning. It's just
Before
but we
the
don't know
mayhem.
what kind it was.
Like hazelnut or decaf.
No, automatic
Oh.
or not.
I was going to say, now what does that have to do with the price of eggs?
Yeah.
I suppose if it was the attacker making themselves a pot, what do they like? But no, I'm in the weeds. Go ahead.
So these friends noticed that Sherrill and Susie's beds appeared to have been slept in. And from what they could see, there weren't any signs of struggle. Not that people were actually thinking there was a problem at this point yet. But all 3 women's purses were still there, containing their keys, money, other personal items. And just like I said, it was just like the house was completely normal, as if they just went outside for something.
And you said all 3 cars were there, correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I remember reading that I think it was the mom was a chain smoker, and her lighter and her cigarettes were there, which would like have never happened.
She's not going to leave them behind.
No. So that was very unusual.
Right.
So yes, Cheryl's car was parked in the carport, and Stacy and Susie's cars were in the driveway. There was a family dog.
Alive.
Who's fine, yeah.
Okay. But left behind.
Right. So the family dog was named Cinnamon.
Oh, what kind of
And
dog?
I think it was a tiny little one, like
No,
a
thank
Yorkie
you.
or something.
Yeah. Not my favorite.
Yeah, okay.
But
Fine.
they're all nice.
Yeah.
I like all dogs, but, we all have our favorites. So shoot me.
So little Cinnamon comes out, and he was unharmed, but he was very agitated from what the reports say, like wanted to be held, kind of like scared and whatever. So another detail that was important was that the porch light was shattered.
Like fixture or light bulb just happened to like shatter and explode and goodbye, or like fixture, everything,
think
somebody broke
fixture.
it. Oh, no.
And I guess it says that the glass was swept up and discarded, and the thing was, which was something that was unfortunate, but again, since no one knew that, or no one was thinking that there was a problem, something that was strange was like these friends who were looking for them, because they didn't think that there was a problem, started cleaning up. So
Crime scene.
right, so it's
Valuable
like,
evidence gone.
yeah, they were completely disturbing things that shouldn't have been disturbed.
But with the light fixture, for instance, my first thought was intruder, wanted to be under the veil of darkness for breaking into the house, home invasion. Then I'm thinking, well, prior to you saying about the friends cleaning up, I'm thinking, well, what if, I don't know how this would have happened, but if like one of the girls coming in at night maybe broke it, Sherrill wakes up, everybody, whether Sherrill woke up or not, they decided to sweep up the glass. They don't want anyone to get hurt. They don't want little Cinnamon to get it in his paws, whatever, the broken bits of glass. So there may be nothing to that. But then with you making the comment now about the friends cleaning up, do we know that is who cleaned up this light fixture?
I think that's who cleaned it up.
Right. Okay.
Which, like I said, isn't the best
move
thing to do.
Yes. Okay.
So anyway, then finally these friends are like, now they are starting to become concerned. So, they sort of like were looking around for these women, but again, they were nowhere to be found. So they did end up calling the police later that day, and an investigation into these 3 women's disappearance started. So law enforcement officials were puzzled by the lack of evidence and the seemingly normal state of the house. And despite extensive searches and numerous interviews, there were really no significant leads or witnesses who could provide information about what happened to Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy. So the immediate concern was on the morning of June 7th, 1992. Like I said, the friends of Stacy who got there, they did do things, sadly, that definitely disturbed the crime scene.
Tried to tidy up.
Right. One of the things was that the broken glass that they found on the front porch, they didn't want anyone to get hurt or anything like that, so they sweeped it up, which was obvious evidence. Well, I shouldn't say obvious, but pretty...
Potential.
Yes.
Yes.
Evidence. They also had used the phone to call some other friends and family members, which they could have also potentially contaminated that if
fingerprint
or I don't know if it could have even been phone record wise. Mm-hmm. If they called someone who didn't pick up, then how would they know if it was them calling, the friends calling, or if it was the people calling that are missing now? Okay, so law enforcement gets there because they were called later in that morning because, again, nobody, these women were just gone now. So the Springfield Police Department quickly realizes the gravity of the situation, but they were slowed down by the fact that the scene had been very compromised, even though it was for best of intentions. Officers conducted a thorough search of the house and the surrounding area, but they found no signs of forced entry or struggle, which made this disappearance even more puzzling.
May I ask?
Uh-huh.
Any sort of, I suppose, again, I'm imagining this to be in a dirt road area. I don't think at all accurate as to what
I was going to say.
I can't get off of it. I can't get past. I'm imagining this. You know what I'm imagining?
You've told me.
I know you don't like this. Well, I know your mother definitely doesn't like this movie because I think of her all the time whenever it's on and I sit down to watch it. Forrest Gump. Do you remember any of it?
You think they lived on a plantation?
I am imagining it to be where Jenny's childhood house was.
A shack.
Yeah, well...
in front of a cornfield. No, this was not that.
Okay. So I was going to say, track marks with another car. But again, I feel like we're in a development.
We are. There's nothing to feel. I'm telling you, we're in a development.
So there aren't going to be any track marks, I guess. So I guess disregard these questions.
I have.
Fine.
All right. So initial theories, right, about what happened here.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was just going to say quickly, I feel terrible for the friends. The guilt, first of all these people gone, vanished into thin air. Mm-hmm. Who knows what you're about to tell us on if this was even, solved. But that they, it could haunt them for the rest of their lives, the guilt over if any valuable clues could have been found if they hadn't cleaned up,
Well, yeah.
It's just awful.
It's very unfortunate.
It is.
So the initial theories included the possibility that the women had been abducted by someone that they knew or by a stranger who had somehow coerced them out of the house.
Stranger danger.
Right, without leaving a trace, which that's a little... Have all three of them just leave the house?
All three of them and someone in their 40s who isn't going to be, you would think, as impressionable as the two teenagers,
right.
That would stand her ground and, with her sort of guiding them or protecting them, really, you would think not as likely.
And it had to happen past midnight. So, again, that's also pretty... I always say suspicious, but somebody's outside at 1 a.m. and
I don't like
they're
to
calling
answer
you
the
to
phone
come
after 8 p.m., so you're talking to the wrong person. Midnight, yeah, I will just have a heart attack. Real quick, I'm finally grasping we are not on a dirt road. So the fact that this was not an isolated area, I know it was in the 90s, so I'm assuming surveillance-wise there were not many options.
No.
But did neighbors hear anything? Did a vehicle come over to this house late at night? Are we getting to that?
I think there is something about some witness reports. So, yes, we will get to that in 1 second. But what I did want to mention quick is that...
Lay it on me.
what you just made that comment about not picking up the phone and stuff. That's why I sent you that picture I did of
oh my God, yes.
the hiker who was lost for over 24 hours because they didn't pick up the phone call from the rescuers because it was an unknown number. And I said that would be you.
Yes. I would literally, like, to my own demise, I would die out there because I'd be so scared. And while we're on this topic, let us just tell the listeners how you used to torment me when you would text message me from so back several years ago, I worked at a job where I regularly worked late, like by choice. And I would stay well past everybody else being gone for the day. Mm-hmm. So I would be by myself, and Brent would know this. And sometimes it was just that he was aware that that was my routine. But if it was especially like a night where I was supposed to come over to see him and I was dilly-dallying, he would text me from this robot number. I mean, I don't even know how you would do it, but it would be like a number that I didn't have in my contacts. And he would text things like, I'm watching you. I see you right. I see you right now. And I would just freeze and just be ready to pass out before I would think like, all right, now wait, who could this be? Shami.
I think I said something like, you looked really pretty today.
And at the time, there was a weird cleaning man.
Yes, exactly.
I told you about him. Like, this dude is getting weirder by the minute. The one day I remember, I mean, it was a sad tale. I mean, something was not right with him. And I remember I wasn't by myself on this particular day, but it was like Sparse, who actually was there still. He was going on and on about how, his girlfriend broke up with him and all this crap. And he starts crying. And I thought, oh my God, no, we cannot have this. And then he asked me if I could give him a hug. I said, no.
I don't remember.
I said, no, I cannot. And you're making me really uncomfortable. And off he went. And that was the last I saw of him. He never came around again. Good. Mission accomplished. Can't have any of that weird shit.
No,
Those are the people that kill you.
Well.
I said what I said. Mm-hmm. Just laying the groundwork for it.
So, yeah, well, that's a scary story.
It sure is. And I know you don't mean that, but it is scary.
I mean, I can appreciate the fact that you don't want to give a random man a hug.
Yeah.
So, I get that.
Yeah.
All right, so back to this.
Right.
So, searches were conducted in nearby areas, and there were some wooded regions around. There were also bodies of water and a few abandoned buildings, but no evidence was found in any of these places. So police also canvassed the neighborhood, and they interviewed neighbors and anybody who might have seen or heard something unusual that night. So some witnesses reported seeing a green van.
Uh-oh. Vans mean death.
In the vicinity.
Windows, no windows.
No windows.
When I see those things coming from a mile away, you know there's somebody in there. And I don't mean somebody. I mean
got you.
A
body.
Body.
Right.
None of this is funny. I do not mean to be
Of course none of it's
even though
funny.
I sound it, but
You're unhinged.
I am.
So, yes, witnesses reported seeing a green van in the vicinity around the time of the disappearance, but it did not lead to any actual concrete results, sadly. And I think that the police found a green van, like, purposely and put it in the neighborhood just to see if it would jog anybody else's memory. Like, if they were going to get any... If it was going to, like, tip off anybody, like, oh, I do remember seeing that. But that didn't... No.
Who was it registered to? The real one?
They never found the real one. That's what I'm saying.
No.
Like, people...
There were reports that it was seen. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, like, people were saying, oh, I think I saw a green van.
Yes.
So the police found a green van, an unrelated green van, popped it somewhere out there to hopefully jog people's memories to say, oh, I saw a green van that night, and there's a green van right there. But that did not happen.
Right. And again, back to the 90s, like, there's no surveillance, I'm assuming, that was like, oh, this is the license plate number. Oh, we did actually see it on this camera.
Right,
like,
no.
Not to be.
So this case quickly gains media attention, and some local news outlets begin broadcasting reports about the missing women. So this brings a flood of tips from the public, but basically there were just a shitload of dead ends or things that could not be verified at all.
Most unfortunate.
So friends and family organized searches, and they put out flyers, and they're just desperately seeking any information that would have led to the whereabouts of Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy. And it was I guess a tight-knit community. Like, they rallied around these families, but again, despite all these efforts, no substantial leads were uncovered. Now, going back to the house, so forensic teams analyzed the house for any potential evidence, including fingerprints, hair, fibers. However, the prior disturbance, again, of these well-meaning friends, made it challenging to gather any kind of evidence that was uncontaminated. So investigators also looked into the phone records and financial transactions to identify any unusual activity or clues about the women's movements. But again, nothing was found that was strange. So obviously this investigation had a bunch of challenges because there were basically no witnesses, no physical evidence, and no clear motive that anybody could come up with as to where these people would have gone. So law enforcement did face some criticism for not initially securing the crime scene and for the perceived delays in treating the case with the urgency that was warranted. But I feel like, again, like I said, in the beginning of this, nobody knew that there was anything wrong to begin with. So, the friends are calling to say, hey, like, we can't find our friends, but there wasn't like blood or broken windows or, yes, there was a broken
light fixture.
Right. But I mean, not a broken glass screen door or something like that. So
I think too, the fact that they had these plans the next day, like on the heels of the graduation, was helpful, because if that hadn't been the case, I feel like it would have even been more like that. The response may have been lackadaisical, like, well, is there really an emergency here? But the fact that this group who arrived knew that they had all had these plans, and it was like a big deal,
right.
I have a very serious question to ask you. Where was Cinnamon after this? Who cared for him?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad he was all right.
Absolutely. Brave little soul.
I know. So back to this suspicious van. I do have some more details on that.
I don't want it.
So in the days following this disappearance, several witnesses came forward with reports of seeing a suspicious van in the neighborhood, like I said, around the time of the women's disappearance. So it was described as an older model, possibly a green Dodge van, which was seen near Sherrill's home around that time. One witness reported seeing the van in Sherrill's driveway early on in the morning of June 7th, 1992.
I just had a thought. Wasn't there, I can't remember how you said it, but in the beginning of this, that she had recently purchased this house, that was there work being done on the house besides that comment you made about the friend was going to come over and they were going to do something with the furniture?
Right.
Do you think it was some sort of worker that was coming over to help with a renovation of some kind?
I mean, I guess, but at 2 a.m.? I mean, that's good service.
It certainly is.
Right.
Right. Odd hours.
Right. Very.
Right.
So, yes. So, one of them, like I said, reported seeing the van in the driveway around that time. Another witness claimed to have seen this van driving erratically in the neighborhood, suggesting that the driver might have been in a hurry or trying to avoid attention. But again, despite all these reports, the van and the driver were never identified. So, that ultimately went cold about the van. So something else that was interesting was I guess you would say one of the more notable suspects in this case was a man named Robert Craig Cox, C-O-X. So he was a convicted felon with a history of violence. He was a former Army Ranger who had been convicted of a murder in Florida, but was later released due to lack of evidence. And in the early 1990s, he was living in Springfield, Missouri, and he worked as a utility worker. He had a known history of violence against women, which made him a person of interest in the Springfield Three case. So during interviews with investigators, he claimed that he knew what happened to Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy. And he suggested that the women were dead and that their bodies would never be found, which seems pretty suspicious.
Sounds like we have our man.
So he provided cryptic statements and refused to offer concrete details, which just frustrated investigators. He was also given a polygraph test, and he failed it. But I think in the context of this, that means it was good for him because he failed saying that he actually knew that they were dead and where they were. You know what I mean? It's not like he was denying it. He was saying, I know where they are, and the polygraph was saying he's lying.
I hear what you're saying. I mean,
Perfect.
I understand what you're saying. Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. What is a utility worker? Is he working on the power lines? Is he taking the water meter readings?
I think any of those. I mean, I only think about it from Monopoly. One of the utilities. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, was he working at a water station, at an electric place?
Right. But why would they just pull him into this to decide to just question him a bit?
I think he pulled himself in.
And said, I
feel like he was the one that was giving
sought them out.
Right. And then giving these weird cryptic statements.
Right.
Like, nothing specific enough to, like, lead them to a body or something.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, odd that out of all of that, you focus on was he working at the electric company or the water station, but that's why you're here, to go out of the box a little bit.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, I guess as a utility worker, could you have a weird van? Potentially.
So, I was thinking that. I was also thinking, again, this doesn't work with the 2 a.m. bit, but like, or had he...
Gas leak, 2 a.m. They would come out for that.
Absolutely. But, like, did he sort of go to establish himself earlier in the day to identify himself to Sherrill, that he works for this company, leaves, comes back at 2 a.m., she, under the guise of this, but, a
lot of speculation you've got going on over there.
She would be unsuspecting because of meeting him earlier. I had another thought, too, about...
Well, while you're thinking of that,
Yes.
I had a thought myself because, yes, it was originally I was making a joke, but I was thinking that is a way to get somebody out of a house at 2 a.m. is to say you're from the gas company and you have a gas leak in your house.
If somebody knocked on my door and saying that...
You're not a normal person,
I would say, let it blow. I'd rather just blow up in this house. Leave me the hell alone. I'll take my effing chances.
I'm just saying, I mean, for somebody who does care about their well-being in terms of an explosion,
yes.
If somebody were to knock, and this is back then, not necessarily...
Good point.
And I'm not saying that it was completely, obviously, it's not completely safe back then either, but somebody's knocking on your door...
More trusting back
then.
Right,
because they're saying, hey, there were reports of a gas leak, whatever. Even if it's not even, can I come in to check, but more like, you
Could
guys
you
should
come out?
Stay outside for your own protection. And then he just pulls a gun on them and says, now get in the van.
Right.
I mean, who the hell knows?
Right.
But,
good point.
But at the end of the day, nothing that he said could have been identified. Like, not identified, verified.
I knew what you meant. Right.
You heard what I was saying.
I heard you.
So now we've got any other suspects. So various other individuals were also considered suspects at different points during this investigation. So there were some acquaintances, some of the former boyfriends, others who had potential motives or connections to the women. One suspect was an acquaintance of Susie Streeter, who had a criminal background and had been seen near the Levitt home around the time of the disappearance. However, this lead also did not result in any solid evidence tying him to the case.
Well, people are allowed to have friends with criminal histories. I mean, if that's a friend of hers, right. I mean, you could. But I will say it's fascinating, not that he necessarily was the culprit, but if he was there late and...
Well, I was going to say, I think that's the bigger thing there. Not that he had a criminal history, but that he was seen around the domicile.
Well, someone found it necessary to say he had a criminal history. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But maybe...
That would have been me who found it necessary, I guess.
Well, maybe...
I'm the one reporting on this right now.
But did anyone question him on if he saw anything?
I'm assuming so, but I truly don't know.
Well, I would hope they talked to the boy.
So another suspect was a local man who had a history of stalking and harassing women.
Oh, God.
I know that's chill-worthy for you.
Absolutely is.
He had been reported for making threatening comments about women who resembled Stussy and Stacy. Oh. He had been reported for making threatening comments about women who resembled Susie and Stacy. And despite these concerning behaviors, once again, no evidence linked him directly to this disappearance. Now, another thing that is interesting is that because of how baffling this case was, the police actually were open to involving psychics.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Look into it.
Yes. Do we have their names?
I don't have their names. But law enforcement received numerous tips from psychics and individuals claiming to have some paranormal insights into the case. So some of the psychics suggested specific locations for the bodies, prompting searches in those areas. And despite these efforts, sadly, again, no evidence was found. But I think I was listening to some type of interview with one of the police officers on the case, and it was like 3 or 4 different psychics, and they had all said the same thing in common, which was like something to do with water. Like they were either in or around water. But I mean, once again, how common is that?
True. I mean, I'm bothered by, granted, like you said, nothing really checked out with any of these, but with the psychics, it disturbs me that it sounds like there was an overwhelming response of where the bodies could be found. Like, we're not talking like anyone is still alive here. They're no longer with us. Like, that definitive sort of conclusion that it, maybe not all of them, but a large amount had, is very disturbing.
So just to dive a little bit more into a few of these theories, one of the first theories is, like I said, an abduction by somebody that they knew. So a prominent theory is that Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy were abducted by somebody that they knew and trusted. This theory suggests that the women may have been lured out of the house under false pretenses, possibly by someone posing as a friend or an authority figure, like a gas man.
A utility worker,
It doesn't say that in my notes, but now...
We're saying it.
Right. The supporters of this theory point to the lack of forced entry and the absence of signs of struggle in the house, which I think does make a lot of sense. I mean, it doesn't seem like somebody forced their way in, like people weren't... Nothing was like disturbed. You know what I mean?
Agreed. And I think, too, what you had said earlier about it sounds like whatever happened, whoever this was, got them all to come out. Because even if you're thinking, like, for instance, if I came over here and I was trying to kidnap you, once you realized what was going on, and if I had to force you to come into my van, we're going to have a struggle. Like, I'm going to have to try to physically get you out of this house and then into the van. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be knocking things. It's going to just...
knocking things.
We're going to be knocking things over. There's going to be disruption in the house. So I think what you said earlier, like, even if it was someone that they knew, they got them outside for some reason, and then I feel like things went awry.
Right. And this also explains why all of their personal belongings, like purses and keys and cigarettes,
good call,
were all left behind.
Yes.
And I know this is so ridiculous, but going off the gas man theory, one's not going to want to be lighting up some cigs,
when the gas is getting turned back on. Hell
so,
yeah.
Just saying.
Right. Also, with the cigarettes, I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm thinking if they thought they were coming out, one, if it was unexpected, out of nowhere, you're not really thinking of what to grab. And you also don't think you're going to be gone for an extended period, even if it was the gas man. Like, you don't think that you're going to be gone a while necessarily. Right. Certainly not being kidnapped. With cell phones, not the time of cell phones. I mean, there were car phones in the 90s, but there's no pingable
there cell phones?
Oh, I didn't think there were.
I'm asking, what didn't Zach Morris have a cell phone?
Good call.
I mean, it was big.
It was a big-o. It was like a cordless cell phone.
Right.
But I remember there were two people in my family who had quote unquote cell phones, but we called them car phones. And I remember they were in like a black leather bag. It was kept in the car. It was only used, not necessarily for emergencies, but mostly plugged into the cigarette lighter. You're not just shooting the shit with people using this thing and asking about their day. You know, you're calling with a purpose.
With
Sounds
an intention.
nice to me. Yes.
Theory 2 was that there could be some type of connection to like organized crime. So this theory involves the possibility that Sherrill, Susie, or actually just Sherrill or Susie, because it was their house. I think Stacy was sort of just a victim of circumstance, if you will.
Absolutely, poor thing.
So this theory talks about how Sherrill or Susie might have inadvertently become entangled with some type of organized crime leading to their abduction and what we can assume was their murder.
Owed a debt.
Maybe.
Right.
So this could have explained why the women vanished without a trace, as organized crime groups are known for their ability to eliminate evidence and witnesses. People who support this theory suggest that the women could have been targeted as a warning or retaliation for something that they knew or that they witnessed. But again, no concrete evidence of this was found as well.
Is there that large of a presence of organized crime in Montana? Is that a thing?
Well, it's Missouri, and I don't know.
I really have to get a grip here because my image, I mean...
We don't need to do this again. We don't need to do this again.
I was going to make a Utah, Arizona reference for your information.
So what? Neither one of us have any connection to Utah, Arizona.
Correct.
You're acting like it's my home state or something.
Natural landmarks I was imagining in my head. Continue.
So one of the last theories was that this could have involved human trafficking.
Oh my God, yes.
Which this theory then talks about how the women were abducted for the purposes of human trafficking, which of course makes sense why this sudden disappearance without a trace.
The van.
Right, which is something that is seen in human trafficking cases. But again, this theory just remains speculative because there's no concrete evidence about that either.
Can you freaking imagine, now stay with me here, if, and I'm not trying to be funny, I'm being serious, and I also recognize how far-fetched this probably is, but can you imagine if like the gas company, not that the gas company was like, was truly trying to orchestrate a human trafficking scheme.
The gas company were the human traffickers.
Not the actual gas company, but if like a group of workers from the gas company banded together to decide to do this under the guise of gas
leaks?
Yeah, like I'm serious. I mean, it sounds bonkers, but like we have literally gone over this now for how many minutes? Good way to get people out of their house in the middle of the night.
Maybe we did crack the case. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know, but we are perhaps onto something. You should make some calls after this.
Yeah. Sadly, that kind of brings us relatively close to the end. I mean, this still remains an unsolved mystery. It's been almost like 3 decades at this point. There have been numerous tips and media coverage, and yet the case remains unsolved. The lack of any kind of evidence is just very infuriating for everybody involved, and the families of the missing women basically just haven't even gotten any kind of closure from what happened.
No.
I did read that in 1997, there was a tribute established in honor of Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy, which was a bench that was dedicated to the 3 of them in Phelps Grove Park, Missouri.
Not Montana.
Right. And they just did it so that it could serve as remembrance and a reflection for the families, the family members, the friends, the community that was affected by their disappearance. And as far as the ongoing investigation, the Springfield Police Department still continue to treat the case as an active investigation. I guess periodically new leads and tips will like make an investigator revisit the file, but that's basically all that happens. So, and of course, the advances in technology like DNA analysis and digital forensics have allowed investigators to re-examine some of the existing evidence and explore new avenues of investigation. But again, nothing has ever been really discovered. There is, in terms of their families, the families of Sherrill, Susie, and Stacy have been pretty relentless, I guess, in their pursuit of answers, and they have worked tirelessly to keep the case visible in the media and to encourage anyone with information to come forward, and nothing has been discovered there either. So it's very sad. And I mean, it is weird to think you have a family member or members who live together and you go over to their house because you have plans that day. Their house is just as it always is. Their cars are there, their keys are there, and they are not there, and you never see them again for 30 years.
And they're never going to see them again, I suspect.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Like, that's
just ripped from them, ripped from their lives. Did Sherrill have any other children?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Poor Cinnamon.
Well, I doubt he's with us anymore.
I was thinking that too, just age-wise.
I mean, he would be about 40. So.
Can we, though, talk about Cinnamon quickly?
Sure.
Going back to the friends arriving at the house, you know, we don't know how Cinnamon was temperament-wise. Was he a scaredy cat? Was he on the skittish side? But the comments that were made about how he was acting made me think they were being said in the way like this is not typical for him. So, you know, and dogs obviously have excellent hearing, because I was thinking if whatever happened, someone was able to get the three of them out of the house, I'm thinking even if that was done calmly, the dog would have heard some sort of scuffle or upset outside. Because even when you think of it like that,
what are you saying? If he heard it, what?
That I think that was deeply traumatizing. Like, Cinnamon wasn't just...
you meant like he didn't do anything about it. Like he was Scooby-Doo.
No.
Or Lassie.
No. Like, poor Cinnamon. Like, it wasn't just that no one came home for Cinnamon and he was abandoned. I'm sure he heard something. I'm sure, like, based off his behavior and that they made a point of saying he was super clingy. He seemed unsettled about something. Like, it wasn't just they stepped out and didn't come home. So that's bothersome, and I feel like shows something occurred. And also, for the three of them to be gone like this, we're not talking it was just Sherrill or even just Sherrill and Susie. You had three people that you had to get out of that house, like, willingly, in the middle of the night where they may have been sleeping, they're disoriented. That took, like, a lot of skill, which makes me wonder if it was more than one person. I mean, obviously, we will not know the answer to any of this ever.
Well, right. Well, I have two things to say. Number one, I just saw that actually in 2021, a journalist, Anne Rodriguez Jones, she launched her own podcast called The Springfield Three, A Small Town Disappearance.
Ooh.
So maybe the listeners want to go check that out and see how many things we got wrong.
I was going to say, very nice of you to plug
I know,
another
I probably
podcast.
shouldn't have done that. I'm thinking, look at these two idiots. They've probably been found for like 12 years. But the other thing I wanted to say was I think we could have potentially found the first hole in the case that we thought we cracked, because if the gas man did get these people to walk out, why would they leave the dog? They wouldn't.
Because they weren't, Yes.
Like if the guy knocks on the door and says there's a gas leak, they all come out, they just leave
grabbing Cinnamon.
Right.
You are.
So.
Yes.
That's a hole in one of our theories.
You are completely correct on that. But I think you're right. Like, our theory really doesn't stand up with Cinnamon being left behind.
Right.
But not to say that they couldn't have come under a guise of something else. Maybe not gas leak, but...
Well, right.
Even if it was someone who's knocking on the door and, like, there's an emergency, like, I need help, someone outside crying for help. I mean, kind of a gamble on who's actually going to answer that door.
Well, I think the other thing is, I think it's much more prevalent now with social media that we know not to open the door for somebody who needs help. Where back in the 90s, social media wasn't really
didn't exist,
thing,
right?
So it's
well,
like,
MySpace, I guess, but
well,
not to the...
Not nearly to the extent of what we have now. So
Yes.
like the idea that back then somebody calling for help would be viewed more sincerely than it would be
Good
now,
call.
I feel.
Good call.
So,
Yes.
anyway, do you have any, last comments and or thoughts about this before we wrap it up?
No, I don't believe I do, but thank you for asking. Do you?
Okay. No, I don't think. I mean, like I said, it's a very sad situation, and the idea that these people just vanished from the face of the earth visibly is nuts. But
Also, what was the friend's name? Stacy?
mm-hmm.
Terrible that this happened to all three of them, but like Stacy didn't live there.
Oh, well, that would be a huge wrong place, wrong time thing.
Wrong place, wrong time. Yes.
Right.
I
That's exactly
agree.
what I
Yes.
said. Yes.
Yes, I know. But this whole thing is what you touched on is like going to forever haunt the friends and family of these women. And if I were Stacy's family, particularly, it would be like, oh my God, of all places for her to have spent the night that night. Like,
Well, right.
just awful.
And like you said in the way beginning, the fact that they had just graduated, like they're literally just about to start this entire new chapter of their lives, and now they're just gone.
I know.
So,
Awful.
all right. Well, that's all I have on today's episode.
Well,
so
good job.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and everybody stay tuned for a bonus episode of the upcoming glossary of
Weird shit we say.
right where we've come from.
You will
and
have a
where we're
guide.
going. So, all right.
Prepare for your IQs to drop right along with ours.
Thank you all. And all right, everybody, have a good day.
Bye.
You've just listened to Chillworthy. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode. While we strive to keep our discussions engaging and lighthearted, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real lives and events that are at the heart of these stories.
We try to approach each topic with a sense of curiosity and respect, fully aware of the impact these events have had on the individuals and their loved ones. Our goal is to honor their memories by keeping their stories alive and shedding light on the mysteries that surround them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and don't forget to join us on the next episode of Chillworthy.